actually, technically, she wouldn't be. Cynthia McKinney got that title in 2008.
Okay, and what party was that? Was that a third party?
It was the Green Party.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
all right.
And actually her running mate was a female, Rosa Clemente. So,
okay.
Hillary,
I guess that'd be a good thing to bring up to all the Hillary supporters.
Yeah, there you go. You can take some of the wind out of their sails. Of course, I think a lot of people are looking at this. Green Party has done well in some states, but they have not been able to get ballot access on a lot of different states. And that's one of the key things about the Libertarian Party that made them attractive for globalist establishment figures to take them over. They have gotten very good at getting 50-state ballot access. So that is likely going to happen this time as well. But go ahead, your comments on Gingrich.
Yeah, well, I got actually my own little story about the Libertarian Party, but I'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, I am glad to see that he is not considering the demonic Pillsbury Doughboy as his running mate.
Yeah. Isn't that good news? I said that Sunday when I saw it. I said, boy, this is really good news. Gingrich is stabbing him in the back. I am so happy to see that because that means that the meetings that they had did not go well. You know, we had Margaret Thatcher go to the Bilderberg thing once, and she said, you know, she was very critical when she came out of it. And within the year, they had an internal party revolution and pushed her out and put in Majors as prime minister. So, you know, just because somebody meets with a Newt Gingrich or meets with a CFR figure like Richard Haas doesn't mean that they've been co-opted by them. And so I saw that as a very positive sign that Gingrich started attacking him. Go ahead.
And let us not forget, you know, those commercials he did a few years back holding hands with good old Nazi Pelosi and Reverend Mac Daddy over at MSNBC telling us about global warming and all of that.
That's right. So, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, selling global warming too. Yeah.
No to that. But I'll say a quick thing about Bernie Sanders that would stop him from a third-party run. Number one, it's too late for him to get ballot access.
That's right.
Number two, he doesn't have the money. And number three, that I think that there's an ace that they're going to probably play against him as far as him even getting any play at the convention is that his wife may very well be indicted, and he could very well be looking at indictment himself, considering if he had any role in that university debacle up there in their state. So,
yeah, isn't that interesting? He's got his own university problem, doesn't he? And it's a much more serious problem than Donald Trump. I mean, they're saying that, well, his sale pitch was a little bit too strong. And the person who brought the charges initially dropped out of the lawsuit. And that's one of the complaints that Donald Trump has. You know, this judge is biased. He should have let that case go because the main plaintiff here dropped out. And so it just keeps going. But, yeah, this is far more serious for Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton's got her own university scandal as well.
Yeah, because Jan Sanders, from the way that I read that, is I know that they're federally investigating her. She may be indicted. So,
well, that's interesting. I had not heard that there might be an indictment. I knew that she destroyed a university system. Yeah, and I know that Bernie Sanders' free tuition would destroy not only this country, but it would make tuition so expensive. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. We got a lot of callers, so I want to move on. Let's go to the next caller.
Yeah, we have Richard in Arizona. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, David and Jakari, and you guys are doing a fantastic job, and all the people you have in the field. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your support.
Yeah, you've had it for, 16 years or something. But
thank you.
Anyway, the reason I'm calling in is because of a comment that you were making earlier. I would have liked to then, but you weren't taking calls yet, and you were talking about libertarians sometimes having bad judgment and wanting everything to be totally unrestricted in trade because it seems like an ideal. And I wanted to make an analogy if I could.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, Alex and other people on your team will say, well, they're killing all these people with vaccines, but it's because of the adjuvant. And it's not, and don't worry, it's not because we don't think the vaccine theory is good. We just want clean vaccines. But the reality, since this is a field I know a lot about, is that vaccines from day one were killing a lot of people and causing terrible epidemics. And when you relate that to free trade, so in other words, there's no such thing as a real clean vaccine. That's a myth. Mm-hmm. And as far as free trade goes, even the most idealistic pure free trade is only good for one thing, and that's to move more quickly toward a world economy and a world government. And if there's no way to preserve domestic industry without protective tariffs. And the fact that they've made protectionism some kind of a bad buzzword is highly misleading. It's absolutely essential. And unless you get rid of all the free trade agreements and make it impossible to make things in slave labor countries and bring them in here tariff-free, then domestic industry will never come back.
You know, I agree with you, because we talk about, well, take Thomas Jefferson, for example, okay? Libertarians love Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson did not have free trade. Thomas Jefferson said in his second inauguration, he said, we have eliminated useless offices, and we've been able to reduce the size of government, and we have eliminated all internal taxation. They didn't have an income tax to get rid of. They eliminated all forms of internal taxation. He says, what farmer, what laborer, what mechanic knows a taxman? And of course, that was a rhetorical question. They didn't. They didn't know who, they didn't have to pay taxes to the federal government. All of the federal government, when it's run at a constitutional size, could be funded off of trade tariffs at the border. And it's interesting, I think, if we go back and we look at the history of the income tax, when they imposed the income tax, and at the beginning it was a very small tax, only on the upper 1%. They were really the only people who paid any taxes of any amount, just the 1%. When they enacted the income tax, what did they do? They used it to cut tariff trade. So, why don't we just say, let's cut the income tax completely. Let's put taxes on goods coming in the border. Let's have a free trade within America. We don't have free trade within American borders because we're not allowed, for example, in healthcare, insurance companies can't compete across state lines. How does the federal government support something like that? The federal government and the Commerce Clause, which they use all the time to intrude themselves into every aspect of our life, the Commerce Clause was there specifically to prohibit any kind of trade barriers and any kind of services or goods within America. And yet we have insurance companies who cannot sell insurance across state lines. But we got all these other mandates from Obama. So I agree with you. I think that in general, I understand we should have a free market. And when they try to extend that outside of the national borders, I think you're right. I think we do start heading down the road to a global governance, and I think we need to maintain a low-tax, small government with free trade inside American borders, and we can fund the government off of the tariffs of goods that are coming into this country. I think that creates a strong America. It creates a vital, we have everything within this country that we need in terms of skills and in terms of natural resources to do anything that we want, but we are losing all of that know-how. We're losing that manufacturing base, and it is atrophying and dying as it's being exported abroad. And so, when we have Gary Johnson say, hey, the argument we've always heard, hey, the Chinese are going to produce free stuff for us, I say, bring it on. And what has it done to us? It's turned us into hopeless dependence.
Yeah, you can still get things from other countries, but not for less than it costs to produce the same thing here.
That's right. That's right. And to what extent? I mean, when we look at the robots taking everybody's jobs, we say, well, okay, that's great, but who's going to buy their products when nobody has any jobs? And that's the situation that we have here in America. If we're going to have these, if we have all of the wealth creation, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about manufacturing, that is the heart of your economy. Yes, it's important to have a service economy, but a service economy without a manufacturing base to support it is a hollowed out economy that cannot survive and cannot prosper. I absolutely agree with you. Great call, but we've got to move on. Let's go to our next caller.
Yes, we have Quest in Florida. Thank you for calling, caller. Go ahead, Quest in Florida.
Hey, David Jakari, thanks for your guys' efforts. I think everybody at the INFOWARS crew deserves a good round of applause. Thank you for what you guys do. Like Shark Week was a big deal with the Discovery Channel. I look forward to Bilderberg Week every year with INFOWARS and your guys' coverage. I think it's awesome. So
it is like Shark Week, isn't it?
Yeah, it's replaced Shark Week. I tell you,
we watch the predators as they swim in those luxury accommodations. Yeah.
It's the real sharks. It's the sharks with suits, right?
Yeah,
it's the sharks that want to control our society and enslave our children. So that's the way that I see it. But I really appreciate the coverage that you guys do. I'm a longtime supporter and buy many of the products that you guys have for sale. So I do what I can to support you guys. My question, and it's so funny, Mikhail Thielen already wrote an article about it last year, and I didn't see it. But Trump's bloodline ties related to Hillary Clinton. So as far as the elite are concerned, he's one of the club. He's a member of the bloodline. I'm just curious to hear your guys' thoughts about that.
Well, you know, we can go back and we can look at genealogies. I got to say to you that regardless of what his genealogy is, I have never seen anybody that makes the establishment, Democrat, Republican, American, foreign, all of them loathe him. They are very much afraid of him. Mm-hmm. And just as we see this whole thing going on with Gingrich and everything, I see that as a very positive sign. I see that as validating his credentials. And one of the things about Donald Trump, if you look at the interviews that he's had with people throughout the years, he clearly is more comfortable, and he said this, and you can see it in the way that he relates to people. You can see it in the way that he talks. He doesn't speak like these people. He doesn't speak like the 18th generation Harvard William Weld, you know, the guy who's the VP candidate on the Libertarian Party ticket, the guy whose ancestor was one of the first graduating classes, and so forth and so on. They have 2 buildings named after him. He's a very smooth talker. Trump is not a smooth talker. He's a straight talker. And he feels more comfortable with the everyday worker. He feels more comfortable with the construction worker at the site than he does with the Goldman Sachs banker. And so I think he identifies, regardless of what his heritage and so forth and so on is, and you don't have to go, so many people, I mean, you look at the original descendants, let's go all the way back to the Mayflower, okay? There are literally hundreds of thousands of descendants of each of those persons. So you don't have to go back too far if you've got a genealogy table to tie people together. I don't even know. I haven't looked at my genealogy.
Well, as we're talking about genealogy, they do these pretty much with every presidential candidate where they link people, you know, in these big groups, like Obama's linked to, who was it? It was somebody he ran against. I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically,
Dick Cheney.
Yeah, Dick Cheney. Yeah, basically, there's always somebody that's, you know, not too far removed. So I am aware of those, but it's not something I take, you know, to the bank.
And I don't know if Donald Trump even cares.
It's just one data point for me. I don't put all my faith into it. My reasoning for bringing it up is just kind of talking about that and evaluating that and just kind of reflecting on that idea. You know, I believe what the Bible says. You know, don't put your faith in any man.
That's right.
But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he seems very good. He seems legitimate. He's got his chops down for running for president by doing a lot of work on television and with the WWE. So I'm not putting anything against him. I support the guy, generally speaking. But like I said, I don't put faith in any man.
That's right. We'll just have to wait and see. All I'm saying is that so far, these early signs and these things that are happening, it looks good to me. And I'm feeling good about seeing Gingrich coming out and attacking him, and seeing Absolutely. These people, you know, these people who we know are we know them better, and we see how much they hate him and how much they lie about him, and that's a good sign. And I thought we're going to take a close look at his press conference, and we're going to play some clips, I'm sure, tomorrow on the radio show. And I think it was a very, very strong and sincere statement. I think he's very sincere on being concerned about what's happening in this country with trade. He spent his own money, a great deal, $100,000 on one ad in the New York Times like 20, 25 years ago to complain about what was happening with trade. I mean, this is something that he's been authentic on for decades. These are things that he's genuinely concerned about. And so when I see him coming in and saying, I'm not going to compromise for political gain on this issue about my integrity, I think that's a very strong thing. And I think he's right about it, and I think he's been right about these other issues. I think it's going to play out. Thank you so much for calling Quest, and thank you so much for your support. That helps us to make this possible for us to put all these reporters at Bilderberg and other places. Let's move on to our next caller.
Absolutely. Now, you guys were showing us something while we were talking to the caller about a Hillary press conference. Is that something that's still ongoing?
Yeah,
okay.
She's given her her speech.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can.
I'd rather talk to the caller.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I was going to say, guys, you're really not missing anything. She's given her victory speech. Of course, the media spotlight is on her, but what should be the spotlight and what should be up front and center stage is the superdelegates, because they're the ones that are stealing this election for Hillary, you know. And a lot of people, they don't understand who the superdelegates are. And I'm here to tell you that they are the career politicians. Barack Obama, for example, is a superdelegate. He represents Illinois. Bill Clinton, he represents New York this year. He's also a superdelegate. So they're current presidents, former presidents, and vice presidents. They are congressmen, you know, members of Congress, Senate. Those are your superdelegates, ladies and gentlemen, the class establishment politicians.
Darren, we could call that crony democracy, couldn't we?